welcome today, guys, to Reco12. My name is Lisa S. and I have the disease of alcoholism. So we begin with a moment's silence, guys, for the still suffering addict inside and outside these Zoom rooms, followed by the we version of the set-aside prayer. Dear God, please set aside anything we think we know about ourselves, about our disease, about the big book, the 12 steps, the program, the fellowship, the people in the fellowship, and all spiritual terms, especially you, God, so that we may have an open mind and a new experience with all these things. Please help us to see the truth. We surrender this next hour to you. Your will, not ours, be done. Amen. So Reco12 is an organization with the mission of learning and sharing the similarities of addiction and of all kinds, and gaining and sharing tools and hope from others who are walking a similar path. We come together from all places, faiths and backgrounds to gain tools and hope from others. Speakers from our past meetings have represented many fellowships, addictions and afflictions, and we look forward to continuing to add to the diversity of speakers and backgrounds, and I hope you'll reach out if you think your experience, strength and hope will benefit this special community. Today's speaker is now going to be Ken, who'll be speaking for around 30 minutes or however long you feel comfortable with, Ken. We'll get him to do his share and then we'll have a few questions and answers afterwards. A bit of business. The Reco12 family of recovery resources continues to grow and has more and more resources for the addict and the loved ones of those addicted. All these recordings of the shares are on the Reco12 library, and also all the links will be put in the chat of the live meeting, and you can also access that on the Reco12 website. There's other super exciting projects. We have Noodle It Out with Nikki on a Monday. That's a live meeting. That's 9 a.m. Eastern American time, 2 p.m. English UK time. There's Justin and Nikki also do a Noodle It Out podcast where they noodle out topics that particular week. That's put on. And there's also the big book Roundtable, brilliant resource. They go through the pages, 164 pages of the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous, line by line. Great resource. I'll put all this in the chat, and again on the website you can access this of Reco12. So tradition 7 is a self-supporting service, and we appreciate your help in keeping us working our step 12 in this manner. We gratefully accept one-time contributions through PayPal, Venmo and Wise, to also be put through the links in the chat. There's a monthly subscription program called Reco12 Spearheads to join in and help support these cool projects. Please consider donating at www.reco12.com/support, or you can click on the link in the chat of the live meeting. We look forward each meeting to growing deeper in effectiveness and understanding as we learn from and with our special speakers. I'm really blessed today. We have Ken. Ken has come in last minute. My original sharer couldn't be with us last minute. And look how this program works. You know, Ken's volunteered to come in and share for us. And wow, with 42 years experience, I am so looking forward to this. And really, we do really appreciate this, Ken, really from the bottom of my heart. And look how this works. Wow, it really does work. Nothing happens in God's world by mistake, for sure. So over to you, Ken, however long you feel comfortable with, my love.
Okay, thank you so much. Boy, there's a God shot. I just happened to pick something out I was trying to think about. I was up, hadn't even done my morning meditation, was getting ready for it. Hi, I'm Ken. I'm an alcoholic. My sobriety date is April 4, 1985. It's actually a clean date. I was going to meetings feeling sorry for people because I had found a sponsor. Thank God it didn't work out, that told me it was just about alcohol and it was okay to do everything else. And so my disease was still active, but it didn't last that long. It was about 90 days. And back in those days, they clapped for you, and I really like it. And so they quit at 90 days. And so I went, well, they'll clap for me for another 90 meetings. So this will be great. And so anyway, that's where my sobriety started. And honestly, the way it worked out, I came to these meetings because I'd been around. I'd been successful, I suppose, in business, but my life was had become a disaster. I'd been dry, what they call, like a dry drunk. Wasn't real particularly angry, but I wasn't drinking because I'd had so many problems that the people in my world told me you need to quit drinking or things are going to change. I don't know what that was going to look like. I don't know if they were going to ship me off to a coffin or they were going to eliminate me, but I didn't want to be eliminated and I wanted to be part of the program. So I somehow managed to white knuckle it for 2 years. And then life changed. And I'll share this because it's kind of a good story, because the truth of the matter is my life really got better than anything that I expected. And that's something a lot of people will experience. You can see in early sobriety. In others, that pink cloud, being sober after you've been drinking for so long and the detoxification, it gets really good. And the truth of the matter was, life got incredibly good. Work got good. I'm doing everything everybody wanted me to do, but I hadn't changed. I would still go to the bars and I would drink an orange and soda so people wouldn't ask me, would you like to have a drink? I don't know that I share this story that much, so you really called me out on this one. Good job. Anyway, I'm happy to be here. So what I would do is I would hang out with all the same people. I'd go to all the bars and everything, and it was kind of like people would pat me on the back of the head and say, "Oh, what a good man. Look at you. You're strong. You're doing it." And I was really happy doing that and hanging out with the people, I thought. But deep down inside, I had that emptiness, that uh, the part of the four horsemen, the incomparable demoralization. I didn't feel good about myself. I was still afraid and I didn't feel great. And so that's why I share that. I want you to know the big difference that I got to experience in what really happened. So as it turns out, my life got good and I became attractive to some people in the world, and I met my first wife. And this was probably the biggest disaster anybody could run into. And I'm not going to go into it too much because it would sound like I don't like her or something like that. We never got along and it wasn't successful. And she was a professional. And when we got married, she quit immediately and was at home and was partying and drinking. And I wasn't doing anything yet. I didn't believe it. She had a degree and she was a very smart lady and had our disease, though. And anyway, I was pretty sure that my problems, which were, and now that I'd been married for the first time, were really difficult. And so I was pretty sure everything that was wrong was her. And I knew just in the world somehow, I hadn't been to AA, I didn't know anybody in it, but I knew statistically what we have here works. I knew that. So I'm going, well, I just need to go to an AA meeting, but I'll go to an Al-Anon and figure out what's wrong with her. And so, as it turns out, I showed up at an Milano club and I went to that meeting, I thought, and it wasn't an Al Anon meeting, it was an AA meeting. I go, well, I'm a drunk too. I kind of understand it. We don't do things real well, but, I was really just full of myself. But the people were so nice to me. I go, well, I'll just come back. I'll get the story. I'll come back. I'll hear about her and I can tell her what's wrong with my life because of her. Well, people were so nice to me, and I really didn't want to drink again. Oh, by the way, when I got married, she convinced me on the honeymoon that I could drink. So I had a very expensive 13 months of matrimony. And anyway, so I got there and I kind of wanted to quit drinking already. And I was listening and hanging out to people, and I wasn't hearing her story, but people are so kind and loving that share just what I'm sharing right now. And I'd hear my story and I'd go, oh. And they had a kind of like a sober bar down below in Calistoga Water and really nice people. It was really great. And I remember there's this one guy I didn't particularly care for that was bartending. And he says, can I tell you something? And I go, oh, yeah, sure. Oh, never mind. I don't want to offend you. Because I guess I looked a little scary still. And then I said, come on, I'm not going to get upset. Tell me what it is. And I think this was probably about 2 or 3 weeks, maybe a month, going to meetings and stuff. But I knew better. I knew not to drink. I'd been dry. So I didn't need AA, right? But I knew it worked. So they had a lot of wisdom. And he says, well, it's a funny old saying, but truth of the matter, if the shoe fits, maybe you ought to wear it. And I went, oh, well, that does make sense, doesn't it? Here I am telling him I know I'm an alcoholic. So that was my first breakthrough. The other one, I'd had kind of a very difficult fundamentalist, so-called Christian abusive childhood, very abusive. And so I didn't want any part of that God thing. I knew it. I could recite the Bible forward and back, and I didn't buy any of that at that point. And I managed to run into the man that became my sponsor to this day. And he is my sponsor, and we still do it. And I said, I can't do this God deal thing. And he said, well, all you really need to know for this program to work is that you're not God. And just try to find some kind of higher power, if it's the meeting or whatever. And then he redirected me to the back of the book that called the agnostic thing. There's a principle, which is bar against all knowledge, which is guaranteed to keep a man in everlasting ignorance. And that principle is contempt prior to investigation. Well, I'm kind of an arguer, scientist kind of a guy, and I go, man, that one works. I can't really argue with that. And so even to this day, when I think I know something, I question it and I look at it again and again. The wisdom that's in that book, that's not even a sober man. That's just a wise man that said that. So that gave me the ability to start looking at things. And so I'm having a lot of fun in the meeting. The people are nice, and I'm hanging out with people that are sober. And I confess, it took me a long time to get to step 5, much longer than many men that have worked with me have had taken. I've had many young men get to it, and I've had one that was successful and is still sober, probably 35 years later, that did it in less than a month. And he would drag me to it. I didn't know you could do it that fast. And he did it. And he said, well, you just read it. It's the next thing. Here, let's pray and let's do it. And I go, well, okay, that's good. So that's the good news. This works, and it's just all you have to do is do it. Some of us, it takes longer. Well, I was afraid of and I'll share this part of my story, is I was afraid, and I didn't know it, of that 5th step, because I'd been really wild and crazy and quite a partier. And in fact, we used to make fun of me. I'm the or I do it myself. I'd brag about I'm the president of the Too Much Fun Club. In other words, if you weren't partying, we'd get something that would make you have a good time. Unfortunately, it was just drugs and alcohol. But anyway, the truth of the matter, my sponsor picked up on it, and he says, you don't need to do your 5th step with me. In fact, it might be a good idea you do it with somebody else. And I know you're not Catholic, but they're sworn to it. So maybe you think about that. And so I'd written, and I don't know if you can see my hand, but I had a book that was at least an inch thick, probably bigger than my record. It was all the 4th step. I was writing and writing and writing. Wasn't necessary. It was just repetition of the same stuff. But I did that because I was afraid to do that. And believe it or not, my sponsor said, hey, there's a Jesuit retreat down in Los Angeles. Why don't you like to think about coming with it? And if you feel like it, and I don't remember him even saying it, but I know he kind of snuck it in there, you can probably do a 5th step there. And I did. And it was such a beautiful thing to do my 5th step with somebody and have somebody that was a sober, wise person listen to it. And he's going, well, that's not so bad. That's what alcoholics do. You're not an evil person. And it was such a relief. And it was a breakthrough. I got to admit, when I did my 5th step with a professional, it was such a wonderful thing. And I guess I didn't go, I guess I can kind of, by the fact that I started off, you can tell I'm an alcoholic. I definitely am. When you put alcohol in me, I'm often rumming, and I may not show up where I'm supposed to show up for a couple of weeks. Or I'm also, here's the insanity of an alcoholic. I'm a blackout drinker. I used to get up in the morning and see what happened to my car or where it was, and have to count certain things to see if I did it. And then I'd kind of sneakily call around to see if I hung out with somebody. Hey, what did we do last night? Only an alcoholic will think that's a normal way to live. A normal person will go, boy, I'm not going to do that again. That's dangerous. Well, I lived a life like that. So I just requalified. So what happened in working that step? I went, oh boy, but I got some things that 8 and 9, and boy, how am I going to do that? And I got to thinking, I said, well, you just make a list and you become ready. And I said, I don't know if I've got the money to pay for some of that. Well, as it turns out, just like it says in the book, when it's really time, it shows up. As it turned out, when I was ready to make the big expensive stuff, it was easy. I think I'm jumping around a little bit, but I'll go back to the fact that I was dry for 2 years and I thought life was good. What's happened in the program? I've got a new peace and a new joy. My sponsor also had me read step 10 and 11 morning and night. He said, hey, there weren't 90 meetings and 90 days to go to, but you read it in morning and at night. And I said, how long do I have to do that? And he said, well, if you miss a day, you start over. And I said, well, how long do I need to do it? He said, well, 90 days is what I'm suggesting. But usually we just have a guy do it until he wants to do it. Well, it is the design for living. The other part, I used the excuse with my sponsor about, well, I don't know that I got everything right. I don't know if I got everything. And I got this novel. He said, you're okay. And when you do step 10 and 11, it actually is the program. You do a daily inventory. You question yourself. Were you dishonest? Were you afraid? Were you have a resentment? Were you selfish? First four are right there. You look at it and you think about what you did in your day, and then you check yourself. And you read on farther. You read from page 84 to the end of the chapter, which is step 11. And what happens for me is it creates the ability to live today. I'm here right now. I'm present for what we're doing in this program. And part of that is thankful. And I don't know why I hit that button and I showed up. Who knows what's going on there? But part of that is, I don't pray for myself. I pray for the guidance to do God's will in the world. And what that looks like is I go out into the world and see maybe homeless people, maybe somebody just in a grocery store. But part of that is you put a smile on your face because it's part of you don't scare people off and you can do God's will out there. And the way that shows up in living one day at a time, people come with me, and I live in Mexico now, and they say, for not speaking Spanish, you got a lot of friends. Well, I put a smile on my face and I go out there into the world, and I guess I just make friends. And some of the bonuses of this program right here was I was sharing earlier, I was afraid to have a family because I knew just statistically that abused children tend to abuse. I wasn't an abuser. I really cared about people. I was that want to protect everybody, codependent kind of a guy, but I was afraid to do to me in anger what was done to me. I mean, I was afraid to do to my children. And as that turns out, kind of a AC adult children of alcoholics at around year 17, I was going to meetings where the people really didn't want to talk about God, which is fine. But it dawned on me, why is that? And I realized, well, why don't you want to do it? And I realized that some of the data that was given to me in my mind was when I was a child, that my religious family had made me a sinner and evil, and I had so much shame about who I was that it was painful. And it dawned on me, that's that childhood stuff, isn't it? And so I actually, good friend of mine said, hey, they got this therapy was kind of like hypnotism. And I said, I don't do that. I was married to one and I don't want any part of that. And he said, well, keep an open mind. That contempt prior investigations kicked in. And so what they did is I'd go lay on a bench and they'd say certain things and then they wake me up and they say, what did you think of? And I don't know, about 6 weeks into it, I go, man, this was the worst thing that ever happened. They said, what happened? I said, well, there's a little tiny blonde kid, and he was running for all his might, and it was a dream, so I couldn't protect him, and it was terrible. Nobody should treat a child that way. And it was kind of experimental, and two of the doctors are looking at me, and they go, you don't need to come back. I go, what do you mean? And they go, well, you got it. And I realized I was that little child. I don't tell the story. I used to tell the story because I had a colorful young childhood and wild and crazy. I used to tell people I was bad. I wasn't. I was an alcoholic just trying to survive. I wasn't bad. I'm an alcoholic with the shame and fear that can come along with bad behavior. And the truth of the matter is I realized at that point I could probably have a family. And I do now, and it's a beautiful thing. It's a gift from my higher power that's unbelievable. And I still, to this day, read step 10 and 11 morning and night. In fact, that's what I was looking at when I said, I think I'll click this button. Little did I know I was going to get asked to share, but when somebody did showed up, it's kind of like, well, you do the next right thing, and the next right thing is I do have sobriety, and it's been beautiful. What I can share about having so much time is I think it's in page 409 of the big book, or 413. In other words, my sobriety isn't any different than yours because I've got multiple decades. Just means I've had a long time to have a beautiful life that's better than anything I ever dreamt of. But your sobriety can be the same as mine as soon as you want to embrace this program. I've sponsored many men that have gotten the same thing I've got. In fact, some of them give me gifts. I remember early on, he just passed on, and it would be sad. I was very close to him for years. He managed to get 39, or let's see, he got 40 years. He did, yeah. I didn't get to be there for him. And it's sad. And I realized that grief is an honor. It used to be I would, in drinking and everything, when somebody get killed or died, I didn't have anything to do with it. And now what I realize by having a family that's so beautiful at my age, I talk to my boys and my wife, and I say, hey, I'm to that age where I could pass. And if I do, you don't need to be sad. You guys have given me so much. I want you to have a party. And this is kind of funny. My youngest says, well, Dad, we know that. We know you want us to be happy. And part of that is we're going to go ahead and have a party. And we're going to go ahead and we're going to incinerate you. And we're going to put you up on that bench there with our favorite puppy that's up there too. And then when Mom passes, we're going to mix it all together and we're going to go put you in the ocean. By the way, that's the Pacific Ocean there that I'm sitting in my office right now. That's where we live. And then I go, well, that's beautiful. That's really what I want. I don't want my children to suffer. That's good. They've got that. And it dawned on me when people pass, I'm honored to be able to miss somebody. So when I feel that little twinge of somebody that I miss, I realize it's another gift that's been given to me in sobriety. To have this much time and have people that I miss is kind of a beautiful thing. So I don't know if that works for anybody. Don't be sad. It's not about sad. It's about being lucky. And I don't know where I'm going with that, but I kind of wandered in there. But actually what I was going to say was about sobriety. There was this guy, I hadn't got my steps done in the first year, but my sponsor said, hey, in the Lord's Prayer, when they shake the hands, they be in a circle. You watch that guy for runs for the door. And you go out there and you catch him before he gets in his car and you ask him how he's doing. And normally they're going to say, I'm fine. I'm on the way to lunch or wherever, and just let him go. But sometimes they're going to say, oh, everything's terrible. Then that guy, and he says, well, what do I do? I haven't worked my steps yet. And he says, tell him to come back in. And when he asks you a question you know the answer to, call me up. Well, Dale, who's passed on, had a year less than me, and I'm going through that difficult divorce that got me here. And it was really unfair. They had a very powerful family and all kinds of lawyers, and I couldn't win, and it just was unfair. And I was going, oh, man. And Dale goes to me, Ken, I love you, right? And I go, well, yeah, Dale, yeah. And I help you, and you're my buddy, yeah. He says, Ken, that still sounds like a resentment. Yeah, I know, but they stole this. They didn't have it come. They moved the prop. And he goes, Ken, I still think that's a resentment. And he was working the same program as me. And I go, gosh darn, if it isn't true, the newcomer can give you a gift. So what I'm trying to tell you, wherever your journey is, you can have a lot more power than you think. And you're part of what makes my life beautiful. And I don't know if there's any wisdom in that. And thank you for calling on me and thanking for resharing. And it works. And well, let me finish with this. You read step 10 and 11 out of the big book. I kind of sound like my sponsor. But if you read the paragraph before it, and that's not coming true for you, it's been my experience. Rarely have we seen this fail. I guess I'm lucky. I haven't seen it fail with somebody that gets down and does it. You don't have to have the same higher power than me. You don't have to do it the same way. But when we get involved with this, ultimately, it's a beautiful, wonderful life. And I guess that's my share for today. Thank you. How was that?
Perfect, Ken.
Ken, yeah, it was brilliant. Do you know what? What an honor for us all to hear you. I'm just doing all,
Oh, you know what I did?
Go on.
I probably killed the volume here. I can't hear anybody.
Can you hear? Yeah, I was just going to say, I love that. And do you know, when you said about reading steps 10 and 11, it's funny because by accident, it was an accident when I first come into the program, and I just happened to get on this little Zoom meeting, what was only 15 minutes every morning, and they were reading pages 84 to 88. And I didn't have a blooming clue what I was reading. And then as time went on, and I was, started, going through, speaking to people and going through the steps, and I realized, I started catching on what we were saying. And me too, Ken. I was thinking, me too, with a lot of things you were saying. That feeling when I'd open my eyes and think, oh God, where's my car? Oh God, who have I upset? Oh God, I never knew what I had done. That, like you said, the four horsemen. That, it's just, and I never want to forget it. I don't want to dwell on it, but never want to forget it because, this disease is so powerful and cunning, isn't it? Like we're told. And yes, and like you, Ken, I still read them pages every morning and every night. Not so much reading the pages at night. I'm more, think, where have I been resentful or selfish or dishonest and stuff. So I absolutely loved it. And I'm really pleased that you gave us your time. What, self-sacrifice or what? This is what this program is all about, isn't it? It don't matter which program you're in, any one of the fellowships, if we're all, working the 12 steps, we're all in it together as a we program. I love it. And if anyone wants to ask Ken a question, please come on in, raise your hand, or you can pop it in the chat. And Ken will do his best to answer you. Jason, come in.
Got questions about addiction, recovery, or just life in general? Let's noodle it out together. Grab your big book, a pen, a highlighter, and a notepad, and join Nikki M and me, Justin B, on Reco12 Noodle It Out with Nikki M. Each episode, we take real-life questions, ours, yours, and those from the recovery community, and dig deep into the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous to find real, practical solutions. So, if you're ready to do the work and apply the solution, tune in to Noodle It Out with Nikki M, streaming now on your favorite podcast platform.
Hey, good morning, Ken. Hey, Lisa. So I was listening in the beginning. Jason, alcoholic. Sorry. I'm pretty new to this in some ways, old and new. I'm mid-40s. Something been going through off and on. Never everyday drinker. But you mentioned that the first 5 steps took you a long time. So my background is engineering. Very successful businessman. Been traveling the world for more than 20 years. And I'm stuck on steps 2 and 3 like most people. I feel like I'm ready for 4, but I can't get there without 2 and 3. And you said it took you a long time to get past 5. And I know I always like to ask what people's advice is, because my sponsor also has 42 years. I think he's going to be 43 later in the year. And my dad's from India, so he's Hindu. My sponsor is very religious. I think he's Christian. He's practicing with me to pray and things like that, but I'm very analytical and I want to solve everything, and I still get stuck even though I do that. So I can't get past 2 and 3. Any advice for me? And I'll be quiet and listen. Thank you.
Over time, I've softened up on that, but I was that was difficult too. But for me, step 2 was the insanity part. A lot of people struggle with that. And I realized that they were talking about me because I knew that my behavior looked pretty crazy. And so I said, well, I can endorse that. I can go with that. But I actually faked it until I made it. In other words, I acted as if a little bit. My sponsor, you'd never know it. I didn't know it probably for 15 years was very religious too, but it wasn't the thing that he would bring up, and it wasn't important. The most important part of the, if you're having a problem with a step, they say to back up one. So I'll just quote that. The most important part of the step is the first half of the first step. In other words, to understand you have an obsession that some of the smartest people in the world, and some of them will end up here too, and they'll not understand why they kept drinking, but nonetheless, they can't understand it because they'll go, why would you do that to yourself, Ken? You know that if you use that, you're going to get in trouble. You know, if you do that, you're going to maybe end up being a jerk. So the first part is to really endorse the understanding that I'm an alcoholic and I probably think a little bit different. And then the other part that worked for me is I knew I wasn't God, but I realized in watching people, and if you're a scientist, you can't really win that argument one way or the other. You can't really win that argument that there is or there isn't, even though when you see spiritual things, you'll tend to go, well, there probably is a God, but you don't have to. But what I realized is the people were turning it over to some higher power, and they were getting well. They were accomplishing things that a lot of people that had an 180 IQ couldn't accomplish. And I go, wow. And so I realized there was something in that. And that's what I started doing. And some people just say a good, orderly decision or whatever. And that is step 3. You turn it over to something. I didn't know what I turned it over to, but somehow that worked. And then the beauty of the 4th and the 5th step is it's kind of an internal honesty. You'll hear a lot of people say it's really hard and it's scary, just like I did a little bit. But it really isn't. It's just something you take. It's your own inventory. It's like, do I have enough of fuel in my airplane to make it to Australia? Obviously not. I'm in Tijuana, but that's an inventory, and all you're doing is you're honestly looking at yourself. And so do it, and it's yours. You don't have to share with anybody. It's convenient. And I think it was act as if. And then I really did run with the I'm not God and keep an open mind, but there's something above and beyond me. And kind of the acceptance key is another way of having a higher power. In other words, you'll hear about acceptance is the key to it. Well, if I can, have a resentment and I can accept it, it won't be all powerful. And so that's kind of what I did. And then the other part of it is get my phone number and we'll hang out. When you ask good questions like that, obviously my higher power maybe has a challenge with one of my kids that you just gave me a gift. There's something about doing what we do together that's so much more powerful than, it's like I won't go off into the scientist part, but that we get 4 or 5 guys thinking about the same problem. They may not have the same IQ, just like my buddy, but he was right. And his wisdom is what I needed to let go of my resentments to continue on here. So I don't know if I answered your question, but anyway, that's the first thing that came to my mind. So thank you for asking.
Yeah, thank you for that question, Jason, and thank you, Ken. It's one of them ones what people are, when it was put to me, I was like, it was put to me, are you powerful enough to rise the sun every morning, or the sea to come in and out? No. And then I'd start thinking, and also, like you said, Ken, you can change that word from God if that's what's troublesome for you, and use source, spirit of the universe, anything, as long as there's a power bigger than ourselves. And I think then as further along, you find that God of your own understanding. And I think that God word can be scary in the beginning, but it's just a 3-letter word, isn't it? So not to be frightened of it. And I agree with you too, Ken. The step 4 and 5, people were putting the fear into me, going, oh, it's so, oh my God, step 4, step 5. And actual fact, if I don't start seeing where my behaviors are affecting my life, then how can I change it? And what a revelation when you do step 4 and 5. I was like, oh my God, I didn't realize, I've been concocting all these things most of the things with there's a few exceptions. You spoke about abuse when you were a child, and likewise Ken, but yeah, it's such a big topic, what seems to be discussed when you first come in, isn't it? And like you, Ken, once I start seeing that, well, these guys are so happy, they've got all these years behind them, there must be something in this stuff. So I'm just, going with it and doing what is suggested in the big book by, a sponsor. So thank you for that, Jason. Great question. And we have a question in the chat there for you, Ken. It says, please, can you share about doing a daily review and your regular routine with the program? So I guess that's the nightly review, would it be?
Hey Spearheads, if you're looking to dive deeper into the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous with people who live the solution, then you won't want to miss Reco12 Big Book Roundtable. Join David G., Nikki M., and me, the moderator Justin B., 3 recovered addicts from multiple fellowships, as we break down the big book line by line. In each 30-minute episode, we share our experience, strength, and hope in a real, raw, and practical roundtable discussion. So, if you are ready to learn and apply what you learn, tune in to Reco12 Big Book Roundtable on your favorite podcast platform.
I put my number in the chat there. And that will, if I'm sitting here in my office, I'll get it. But otherwise, it'll leave a message.
Okay.
And leave the message and it'll email me, and I will get back to you as soon as possible. And if we get to a level that we're sponsor or sponsoring each other, what'll happen? There's no wrong time for me. I got lucky in the program and got to get involved in computers at an early age. And part of that was, you got clients that, they can't get their bank balance to work, or they can't connect, and they call them at all times of the day, and you just tell me what the problem is. And if you're not going to drink and it's something and I'm driving, I'll say, let me call you back. There's no wrong time. I'm open to any calls, but you'll probably catch the answering machine. And I don't know. Yeah, I shared my number. Thank you. Please, can you share about doing a daily review? Yeah, I do that. I read step 10 and 11, and I kind of share that, and I really do. And I've gotten older, and I don't do it morning and night because I attempt to do it. It works now at my age. I fall asleep. So that's the true confession. I will look at it sometimes, but if I might go, oh boy, and look around, and my wife might tell me it's time to go to bed or something. So anyway, it's all good. I hope I'm answering those questions for you. And easy does it. Just be here. And the other part of it is a powerful disease. And I guess another disclaimer, I acted as if, in other words, they said, fake it until you make it. I kind of did that. I did step 6 and 7. I'd been brought up around a religious thing, and I knew how to pray. I knew how to sound like a evangelist, and, I could sound good. But it wasn't that I was lying or anything, but I just hadn't bought it yet. My shift happened in doing step 7 with the sponsee. And I don't know if it was second year. I was in my second year when I did my 5th step. And it may have been the full second year or the start of the 3rd year. But I listened to that boy do that 7th step, and I go, well, man, that makes sense. Why don't I go ahead and turn it over to that guy that we all know about that's a kind and loving guy? Why don't I use him for kind of a somebody to copy? And I shifted, and I know I shifted, and I believe that's when the true spiritual experience changed for me. And I've sponsored enough guys that it doesn't have to be that. It can be something different. But honestly, when I actually let go, and I really did do a real 7th step, and I turned it over to a power greater than myself, I had a shift. I don't want to sound real religious and real spiritual or scare anybody off, and I don't share all of my story because I was really challenged, and I think the truth is it's a good story, the fact that I really resisted it, and I'm sober and I'm living a beautiful life. My boys, I once in a while I'll be selfish and I say, "What do you think of me as a dad?" I don't need you really to tell me, but I guess my ego wants to hear, "Oh, Dad, you're really a kind and loving guy." I am. Well, that's good. They know my story, not from me. People, I was so wild and crazy. People from 40 years ago, do you know what your dad was like? Oh God. Okay. Anyway, thank you for being here. What a stroke of luck for me. Thank you so much.
Oh, I love that, Ken. It is, isn't it? And that rippling effect, we were discussing before, and with my kids, they did witness me being actively drinking and saw me at my absolute worst, all of them. But today we were speaking, and that they now, as it ripples out, the effect ripples out, doesn't it? And if they ever have a problem for themselves, or surely probably will know of someone in schools, or their friends' parents or friends themselves, and they can say, do you know what? I know that there is a solution, there is help out there. Whereas, like, for me, I didn't know, I sort of knew about AA and stuff, but it wasn't taught, I wasn't being educated about it in school or anything. I had no idea. So the rippling effect when you speak about your children is beautiful. And I dread to think what my kids say about me, what I used to do, I tell you. But yeah, and you touched on there about sponsorship. And you said you sort of go with the flow. I like that, Ken. Have you always done that? Do you just go with your intuition with sponsoring with people? Like, do you go line by line through the book at their pace, or what does that look like, Ken, for you today?
I kind of I am not your boss. As your sponsor, I'll tell you what I know. And early on, I didn't know what I know now. I sponsor probably at a little higher level, I think, than I used to. But what I would do is I knew it worked, and I was staying sober. And my sponsor told me, wonderful man, he's very powerful, he's really happy. And he said, you just do what you know and tell him it works. I was lucky enough to have, I'll share a little bit more. I had a kind of a really neat guy. He kind of sponsored me. He really was good at the first 3 steps. And then in listening to me and my ability to change my sobriety date, he actually turned around and I got to sponsor him for a time. He got me sober and got me enthusiastic. And he says, I've never gotten past the 3rd step, Ken. Could you help me pass that? Well, the funny part of it is I don't want to tell his story, but he was a very colorful character. And who would have ever thought he got into the professional world with the government of helping people? He's the kind of guy that you would think would probably have been locked up forever, and he's a wonderful man. And now he's got the advantage to surf all over the world, and he's retired. So I don't know if I'm answering that. In other words, the program really works no matter how you do it. The reason I share differently is the judgment I might have on somebody when I was younger, thinking my black and white thinking of right and wrong doesn't exist for me anymore. In other words, what a person's shame or guilt would be, I don't necessarily think that's true. In other words, if somebody feels that they need to confess that, I try to say, well, think about who it'll work, but I can't judge them. So I've changed with more compassion, and I've learned that with having children. I didn't have anybody as a parent that could be a loving parent and say, well, you dropped your ice cream. That doesn't make you bad. We'll get another one if we can. And if we don't get another one, maybe you didn't need to eat it, but you're important and it's got nothing to do with you. So I've got a way of loving and being more acceptance and sponsoring. And I sadly have gone to a lot of funerals and less. And hopefully with the wisdom I've got, people will get what I've got, which is happy, joyous, and free. And frankly, most of them do. I can't think of anybody. When they're telling me it doesn't work and it's real bad, honestly, that's a call to me to spend more time with them In other words, it's very easy for alcohol is a depressive. And so a lot of us can be depressed until we detox. That's probably the first 90 days to 6 months. So even if you quit drinking like I did, life will get better. But what we do here is even better and better. And we do that together. And it's real easy to see the injustices, maybe a policeman that lied or a wife that ran off or whatever it is. And that's the victim. And alcoholics tend to like that part of it by reading step 10 and 11 and having an old man like me around. I'll go, in other words, part of sponsorship, the only thing I'm going to do that's outside of anything, I'm not going to tell you how to live your life, but as being friends, and we'll get so close, if I see something that you give me permission to talk about, and by the way, you all have permission to call me out too, because you just became my friends. I like constructive criticism. You might be wrong. You might be really right. So I'll love it if you say, Ken, I don't know, maybe you ought to look at this part of your spiritual program. I will definitely use the contempt prior to investigation. So I don't know if that helps with your sponsorship. You get them in the book. The best thing you can always do is quote the book. And if you guys have a question, you call me. And guess what? If you stump me, I'm calling Dave. Now that's my sponsor. And he's been around for before there was books, I think. I don't know. He's a wonderful man. My second wife in recovery said to me, is your sponsor always smiling? And I go, yeah, he is. He really practices better than me. He called me on it one day, and I'll just share this because you get older and your body changes. But there's something about smiling that we don't know why instinctively changes the brainwave, and you'll end up having a nice day. He saw me in a Zoom in COVID, and he says, Ken, are you having a good life? And I go, yeah, it's really good. Family's good. Everything's good. And he said, well, Ken, you forgot to tell your face. Oh, okay. So here's the smile. So anyway, that's the secondary wisdom. What happens, it just kind of sags a little bit. I guess I could get some stitches or something, but no, I'm in a really good place. Thank you. I don't know if I shared the answers with them.
No, that's lovely. And you're beautiful, Ken. And thank you so much. You know, I really did appreciate, especially stepping in at last minute, Ken. We all appreciate you. If we didn't get to any questions, or if you have any other questions, please consider joining our WhatsApp community. I did pop the link in the chat there if any of you guys want to get on that. Or there is the Reco12 email, which is reco12pod@gmail.com. That's also in the link there, guys. And if you've not yet rated and reviewed the podcast, great way to work step 12 and sharing this message with others. And I invite you all back next week. And one last bit of service for you, Ken. If you could lead us out on a prayer of your choice. Thank you so much.
You know, let me share. It came to me real quick here. I love the Saint Assisi prayer. And you can take the God word out of there. When that was given to me, I took it out and I said, well, that's a great way to live. But in all reality, I have a mentor that's become a really good friend of mine. And he's a guru spiritually, but even he does a moment of silence. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know that's me. Thank you. So I used his prayer because it's short and quick and it doesn't hang anybody up. And Lord's Prayer is good and the Saint Assisi's prayer is powerful. And I'll probably say that a little bit later. By the way, if you don't read step 10 and 11 and you read that prayer as you're driving down the road in a hurry, you'll still have a good day, I think. It seems to work. So thank you so much for being here. Appreciate it. I'm going to go do my deal. Thank you so much for being in my world.
And I'll leave it on this. There is one who has all power. That one is God. May you find God now. Stick and stay. Guys, come all the way in, sit all the way down. Let's trudge this road of happy destiny together. Work it. You are worth it.